Hello, good afternoon. Here in the Hacker Dojo once again. We are in the Fireside Chat. Today we have a very interesting guest that has been here in the Hacker Dojo for a while. That is Greg Becker. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jorge.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, everyone in the audience.
Yeah, we are ready to have a very good conversation with you to learn, first and all, who is Greg?
That's a complicated question. Do you want to just go into it, or do you want to be more specific?
No, you are open, and we are eager to learn more about you.
Feel free to jump in for more information if you like. I'm Greg Becker. I have 30 years experience in things like computer science, drama, improvisation, education, ed tech. So I like doing a lot of different things. I've been at the Hacker Dojo on and off for 10 years. And during that time, it has been a great experience to watch the dojo grow and try different things.
You are almost part of the founders team.
Well, not quite. I was less back then. I would just kind of come in and work at the first dojo and the second dojo. I'd never been to the third dojo, but this fourth dojo, I've been here a lot. And all the people I meet here every day at the dojo, it's an amazing place. I like to think that we're building a community of creativity and helping people work on their problems. I always encourage people to talk to each other.
Well, you're wonderful for that. I see you every time that anybody that looks like a new face here, you are one of the very first person to jump on and that person start to talking, invite to share ideas, collaborate. How is that? Why is that attitude that you do that appears to be is part of your DNA?
I'm probably a bit of an extrovert. I would think my wife would definitely say I'm an extrovert, where she's an introvert, and my kids are introverts. But I'm an extrovert, so I try to go out there and get people. I generally spend a lot of time trying to make the world a better place, right? So one of the ways I try to make the world a better place is to go up to people and find out and make them feel welcome. That's something we try to do here at the dojo very much, is try to make people feel welcome. I also have a background in drama and improvisation. So improvisation, I did that for many years, and it kind of gives you that jump in, attitude. Just jump into it. Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. So a lot of that makes it easier. I was also a teacher, right? So again, trying to educate people and get them to know things.
Well, that's something that is great. You as an educator and as drama and improvisation, that's a connection in some way. But not all the teachers, not all the drama people are able to improvise as you do. You are great to do that improvisations. Where do you learn that?
That's a good question. In high school, I would be in shows, but I'd also do tech, in the back with lights and sound. But I always got portrayed, typecast as the villain. I always played the villain parts for some reason. I think it's because I was loud and big. But then when I went to college and you try to do acting, you find there's all these people that are serious about acting. So you go, oh, I'm not going to compete with those people. And that's when I started doing improvisation. So in improvisation, you don't have to remember lines. You just kind of go out there and have fun. So then when I graduated from college, a woman by the name of Joan Peterson had taken a class from Patricia Ryan Madison at Stanford. And she has a book called The Wisdom of Improv, or Improv Wisdom. I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to read it. It's more of improv for life skills. And I would spend, after that, I would help her teach her classes to teachers and whatnot. And I would then went on to myself to teach improvisation classes for life skills to a variety of people, business people, teachers, students, all sorts of different people. And the more they think about improv is that there was a time that I was probably more shy and less likely to jump in. But the idea about improv is that you play games all the time. And the more you do this, I'm talking like playing improv games every week for like years, then...
What kind of games? That's a very interesting. Is board games? Or
no.
Football games?
The typical example I give of an idea that was transforming for me is there's a game called Freeze Tag. It's a very simple game. And what happens, you have two people and they start a scene and and at some point a person yells freeze, right? And they tap somebody out and they go in and they start a new scene. And they dial the new scene and keep going until somebody else yells freeze. when people start playing this originally, so all beginners do this, they think of a funny idea in their head and think, oh, that'd be a fun idea for a scene. And then they watch the people and they wait until they think they get into a certain position that we could endow that scene, right? So if they're trying to have a fight scene with a person chopping wood, they wait till it looks like a person was chopping wood and then they go, freeze. But that never happens. And even if they did happen and they hit freeze, the person would take a different position and it never works. What you learn is, and that's how people, because they're trying to think ahead. What I learned is that the best way to play this game, or the way you really play a game, is when the scene is failing, that's when you top somebody out.
When the scene is failing.
When the scene is failing.
When they are lowering the energy, they are getting into hesitation and things like that.
Right, they're your teammates, you tap one out, you have no idea in your mind what you're going to do, but you just go in and then you start a scene. And that is a key thing, and that's a key thing is, when you see the people failing, and you see your teammates failing, that's when you jump in.
That's quite interesting because that is the kind of things that you need to do when you are an entrepreneur. When you are an entrepreneur, you have a high energy, but there is moments that you don't know what to do. And that capability, that means you encourage the entrepreneurs to learn about improv?
Yes, and learning, it's a transfer skill. So in improv, we learn things like shared control, which is very good. So how to share control, between partners and working on things. So that's an important thing. Saying yes, not blocking ideas, looking for compromise. That's another important thing. We do status work, but all of improv is you're telling a story on stage. That's the whole idea of improv is you make up a story, usually gets suggested from a story. And as a life philosophy, we're all telling our own stories, right? And so the question is, how can you move your story forward? So when you're running your startup or you're doing any in Denver, right, I ask people, what are you going to do today to move the story forward? Another game we play improv is we tell a story like one word at a time, right? You get people doing this, and this is also a shared control game where they try to, people who are really far in control, they try to insert their idea of the story, right? They won't let go and keep saying it. And they're trying to convince people to say the words that they want. Doesn't work. But also a story can get stuck where it's like, Bob went to the store and looked at stuff and looked at some more stuff and he eventually bought something and then you can get stuck where you're just not moving the story forward. So you want to, Bob went to the store, bought an axe, left, found a tree, chopped it down. That's moving things forward.
Yeah, but that is quite interesting because here in the Hacker Dojo, one of the things that we have is a lot of entrepreneurs that are seeking how to move, and they feel that they need to have like a script. And building a company, a startup, is not as scriptable. Every company has their own flavor, their own conditions, and this process of doing the improvisation is quite interesting. There is something that I recall very much. A friend of mine that is also into the improv is every time that you stuck, say if and or is
yes.
How that works?
Well, yes and
yes and
yes and the idea is people, again, when you're telling a story and someone makes the offer that, Jorge, that's a beautiful dog you have next to you. And you say, oh, that's not my dog. You're basically throwing away the offer that I gave you, right? Nobody likes to be blocked and everything. So again, often when you're brainstorming, whenever you tell someone gives you an idea and you say, this really, let me tell you my idea instead, right?
And yes, and add that continuity in some way.
Right. The point is, when you say no or block, it stops the story, right? It doesn't move it forward. When you say yes, it moves the story forward, hopefully in a compromised way, that a shared way that you can move forward.
But that's interesting because you are talking how to keep moving and the shareable, how you share, how you enable the people to get into the discussion.
Right.
And that is quite important. When you have a company, you don't want that you are the boss and everybody's following you. You want that you are the boss because you are not driving the conversation.
Well, and again, there's lots of parallels, but an exact example parallel, again, everybody hates a micromanager, right? Because basically a micromanager is blocking how you want to do things and telling you how things are done. And, the motivation books like Motivation 2.0 and tell you that, motivation that motivates people is one of the key things is autonomy, right? When you don't have autonomy to work and do it the way that you want, you're willing to do the task, but if somebody tells you exactly how to do that task, right? You feel blocked, right? Your story is not moving forward. Maybe the CEO's, story is moving forward, but you're kind of blocked, and it feels lousy.
And you want that everybody in the group, in the conversation, move forward the history, and they feel that they are part of the history.
Right, that's a key thing. They want to be part of the story and move the story along with them. I think most successful companies are the ones that enable their employees and the people in the group to help move the story forward.
And now, you as an educator, because that's quite interesting. In the education, the traditional education looks like it's more than you gave. You talk to the students, and the students listen, and they need to absorb. Using this technique makes easier to the people to participate, to absorb that knowledge.
Yeah, I think in general, well, again, in education, I'm a bit of a radicalist. I've studied a lot. I've got my master's in education. I taught high school. I would throw away a lot of things in education. But I think generally, when you think about, again, the Socratic method, right? Again, that is much more of a flowing, moving the story forward, where you say something, ask you questions. And really, when you ask questions based on what you tell me, that's very much a yes and. Right, I ask you a question. So Jorge, what do you think about this? And you tell me the answer. I say, oh, that's interesting. And why is that? The point is, I'm saying yes, and I'm accepting what you gave me and asking you to explore it more, which is a great.
Yeah, it's an invitation to collaborate. It's an invitation to grow the conversation, not to question the conversation and try to keep it. And that's fantastic. And now, you in your professional life, you has been very much in the late, I don't know how many years now, very much related to how to evaluate educations and how people can find where to take their kids to the schools. Right. Can you tell a little bit about what you have been doing in the professional life in recent years?
I've worked at a variety of educational companies, ed tech. So I worked at a company called eBury, which made book content available online to academic libraries all over the world. The interesting thing about that is we went global almost immediately, and a lot of libraries in other countries, they loved us because it's very expensive to get physical textbooks, and we gave them access to books, pennies on the dollar. So we helped that, educating people out there in the world. I worked for a company called EdSurge, which was a newsletter, which, helped give information on people when money started going into ed tech, and we had a newsletter, and it's still out there. Subscribe to EdSurge. It's a great newsletter. And that would help people, just information. It was interesting to see how, people in ed tech, unfortunately in ed tech, you'd have a startup and they'd have a great idea, and you'd watch them and they'd go and try, I'm going to sell this to the students, and because it helps their learning. And then they learned that the education market is horrible. There's no money there, and the pie is completely eaten. There's just crumbs there, and they would have to always pivot then to try to come up with something for the administrators to be happy with, so admin dashboards and data tracking, and it was kind of always sad to watch. And then I worked, I worked for Tinker, another great company that makes programming tools for kids. I suggest you check it out. And then I worked for Masterclass for a short while, which again, a nice high-end product there. And then I worked at grade schools. And so grade schools, we collect data from all over the place, and we provide it for parents and try to educate parents. So the key thing I see is, how do we educate parents? But it's the first company I've worked with which is more of a data company, and data is always a double-edged sword, right? So again, we collect the data, and we give rankings to things, but we try to contextualize it, right, to help parents give choice and understanding. It's an interesting thing.
Well, the market is not an easy one, and that's interesting. You talk about newsletters, and that is a question that we have here: how we should get to the public. Hacker Dojo is a place that happens a lot of things. We have right now this conversation. After that, we are going to have some kind of activities that is called the Lighting Talks. We have too many things to share. How we do share that? What do you suggest that we should share? Let's pick a little bit of your brain to give us ideas and break out and invite the people how they can collaborate with us.
Yes. Well, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm a bit of a newsletter junkie, right? In the morning, I always sign up for newsletters, the TLDR. I've signed up for all 8 of their newsletters now. I recommend the TLDR if you haven't signed up as a news aggregator. I have a newsletter that's like International Intrigue, which I like, which is about, other news, Washington Post news. So I like newsletters. I read a lot of them. But how can we That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, Jorge. I don't know.
Well, but that is the kind of problems that we have, everybody of us. And,
Right.
and here on the Hacker Dojo is an invitation how we get our works outside of this building.
Yes.
Because today there is not too many choices. Social media is a wonderful way,
Right.
but it's not an easy way to be doing that. Newsletters appears to be still being one of the best choices to distribute some kind of content.
I think the key thing is, what I like to hear at the dojo, and the reason why I try to volunteer my time is, I think it's a great place for community, right? It's about building up a community where people can talk and interact. I mean, I would say that, again, as you know, Jorge, because we have this, we're in this 3I implementing innovative
We're going
ideas
to get in there.
workshop.
Wait a minute.
Right, but I support you for that. But again, as you know, I'm all about socializing ideas and socializing and talking to people, because you never know when talking to somebody is going to inspire something in you or get a different perspective on something. And to me, interacting with people is the road to success. Now, that could just be the improver in me. It could just be the extrovert in me. But I'm all about socializing, and I'll work on ideas for years, right? And I work on a little bit, and then it goes back into my brain, and then it'll come back out. And one of these days, might come to fruition.
Well, we're going to come back into the innovation ideas, and it's a very important subject. Yeah. I really get a little bit, how did you meet the Hacker Dojo? How did you found it? How was the first contact? I know that was 10 years ago. Did you remember that?
I do. The person who brought me to the Hacker Dojo was my brother-in-law, Nat. We actually met at one of my first .com jobs. He was running consumer group at Beyond.com, and he hired me. And his sister was working in QA, and she was QA for our engineering group, and I spent a lot of time with her, and I ended up marrying her. So that's how he became my brother-in-law. And he came to the dojo first, was at Evelyn, and told me about it. After I left Eber, it got sold, so I took some time off, and I would come and work at the dojo. And for those who know history, the first dojo was like an old, kind of like this, but an old glass manufacturing thing. So it was kind of funky, and had like a little ward of rooms and stuff. And we started doing events. And originally, like the story that I've heard is the fire marshal said, well, we originally wanted to do this stuff. Said, okay. But then we started building things and doing things, and the fire marshal came back there and said, yeah, no, you can't have you can't have events on built-in things and warrants of stuff. So it would have cost like $250,000 to fix that. And so at that point, we left and we moved to the new place, which was just over here, and it was much bigger. But I think the energy about that is that there are a lot of people, again, always trying to work on their startups. It was always startup, focused, right? Again, we still always had the electronic labs, and the maker things. We had lightning talks. That was the first thing. I attended lightning talks 10 years ago. It's one of the things I've kept around. We used to have mixers, and I always remember one story, which I always kind of funny story. We had a happy hour, right? And I tell this story. There's this young gentleman who's standing off into the corner. It says, I'm an introvert, and I want to make everybody feel welcome, right? I go up to say, hi, how are you? And I forget his name. So why are you here? He says, well, I'm from the Midwest, and I sold all of my worldly possessions to buy a ticket to come out here to Silicon Valley, where the streets are lined with co-founders and VCs. I go, all right. What's your idea? I'm going to out-Facebook Facebook.
Oh, boy, that's
a big plan there. It's like, good luck with that, and stuff. But then he was sort of an extrovert, so then he was following me around. So I had to introduce him. Hey, have you met so-and-so here? He's trying to Facebook. I don't know what happened. I think he changed his idea.
I can imagine, but and that's we see a lot of people that come here, and that's a good place to learn what you can do or what is a good choice to move forward with this concept of not blocking people, is inspiring them to do something else.
That's right.
I would like to ask you something very, very critical. In that 10 years, what could you feel that has been the most valuable learning experience that you has seen in the dojo, you has learned in the dojo?
Right. I think the key thing is just interaction with people, right? Again, it's just bringing a diversity of people. And you might say, well, they're all sort of, startup people. There's a little bit of, self-selection in there, the group of people that show up to the Hacker Dojo just because of the way it is or how it's self-advertised. But even within that, you always had a certain diversity of people, right? And we're all excited. And so it's always interesting to talk to people. And that's the same thing here, is that why I say this is a better co-working space than going into the actual company. Because when you go to your actual company, right, you talk to people, but you're all kind of working on the same thing, right? And I think it's much better to come to here at the dojo because you get so many different perspectives. Yes, when you go to work at a company, you get perspectives and less when you're on this, but the great thing about the dojo is it's all different things. You never know who you're going to talk to.
Yeah, and that's very valuable. And just for closing that, what you are doing today here in the dojo, we are eager to talk to the people about this concept of 3i that you have started about 4 months ago, something like that. You just have the 8th edition yesterday, and I am very glad to be part of the participants.
I'm very glad that you are part of the participants. Quickly, again, I know we're running short on time. Again, an idea that I had, I used to teach these improv workshops for life skills, and I always had the idea, you know what, one of the things I'm trying to change in education is I don't believe in one and done learning. So I don't believe I can give you the book, Jorge, on, doing, talking, friends and stuff. You just read it, it's like, okay, you read the book on exercise, you're done, you don't have to exercise, right? That's not how it works. You have to exercise. And so the idea of the Implementing Innovative Ideas workshop, 3i, the 3 I's there, the idea that we have that workshop every other Thursday, right? And it's an opportunity for people to come in. It's like going to the gym, but instead of exercising your muscles, you're exercising your ability, your creative thinking skills, and your critical thinking skills to just keep iterating on your ideas, expand out. As we talked about the double diamond, you kind of take an idea and then you explore all the possibilities, and then you kind of evaluate all those options, and then you maybe come up with a new next step, and then you expand out, and you go on, it's like this. And it's just a place where people can go, and it's always great because we always have great people, and they're always interested, and they're talking about things, and it's great. But the key thing is we try to do activities, right? It's not just me talking.
And you mentioned something that is critical, the critical thinking. That is not an easy way to learn about that. And the only choice that I've seen, and I really enjoyed in these sessions, is you make the people think about that. What do you think in how this idea can move forward, how this idea can take a different position, and learning so many different perspectives from the people that are involved, because all the people that are in the session are participants, are not just listening think. It's not a conversation, it's not a teaching session, it's you inspire to people to break out the mindset, open ideas, and question everything that they do.
Right, and the key thing, I always have a disclaimer at these workshops, it all depends, right? I'm just trying to make people aware of things. My mastery model of education is become aware, and then we try to fit into our own mental model and internalize it, and then we practice it and become efficient at it, and then we can grow, right? So again, I always tell people, I'm going to make you aware of some new things. We're going to remind you of a lot of things that you already know, because we need reminders as human beings. We constantly need to be reminded. If we could remember to be kind to each other, the world would be a better place. But when we're working on our startup, we're working on our idea, we get focused in, and we forget all these little things that could be helpful and stuff. So the goal of exercising and trying these things out is just keep working on it. It'll work in some situations, other times it won't work, but we're trying to help build up your tool set of things that you can apply and just help move your story forward. That's the whole point. Again, we're all about moving your story forward. Whatever that story is, we want to help you do it.
And that's fantastic. And I can tell you, it's the best 2 hours that you can invest every 2 weeks doing this. And in the other weeks, when you are not coming here, is the best time to reflect and sit by yourself and try to analyze what did you learn and what are you going to propose for next time. And that is quite interactive. Is being in a social group is good, but being an individual thinking time, that's also very important.
Right. Well, often people that are stuck moving their story forward is they're just not making time for it, right? So it really is good if you can, that's the time blocking method, right? So instead of having the to-do list of shame that you never get to, right? You have to schedule, items on your thing and say, every Thursday night for 2 hours, I'm going to work on my ideas, whether that's going to a workshop at the Hacker Dojo or just sitting down in a nice place and just reflecting on the ideas, picking out some parts and figuring out what my next step is.
Well, that has been a fantastic conversation, and I really enjoy. I ask to the people, why you don't join to the 3 I's every other Thursday and come here, and being in the Hacker Dojo is a fantastic place, and you are the official greeter in some way.
One of the greeters. Again, I'm trying to move everybody's stories forward and trying to look for people that are, might be lost and try to help them out. But again, disclaimer, me and Jorge talk a lot, and stuff. So
Well, thank you very
come
much.
and talk to my other events. We're always here. We're not always here, but come and talk to us someday.
Yep.
All right.
We're open for that conversations.
Yes.
And enjoy these kind of conversations, not only on the Far Chats. You
Yes.
can do that every time here in the Hacker Dojo. Thank you very much, and we are welcome to have you in the future sessions and learn more about triage.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jorge.
Thank you.
Thank you.